I bought my parents a $425K mansion. I arrived to find my dad trembling as my sister's husband yelled, "This is my house, get out!" She laughed until I walked in. My sister's face went from smug to frozen in half a second. Her husband shut his mouth mid-sentence. The living room went dead silent, except for my mom's quiet sobbing from the corner. I'd driven 5 hours straight after my neighbor texted me a photo. My parents sitting on their own porch steps while my brother-in-law grilled on what was supposed to be their retirement deck. The caption just said, "Thought you should know." I walked past him like he was furniture and sat down next to my parents on the couch. Their own couch, in their own house, and they were sitting there like visitors. "How long have they been here?" I asked my dad quietly. 2 weeks, he whispered. "They said it was just for the weekend." My sister finally found her voice. "We're family. We're just helping mom and dad settle in. You know how overwhelming a new house can be at their age." At their age? My parents are 68 and 70. They're not senile. "Really helpful?" I said. "Is that why you moved into the master bedroom? The one with the ocean view I specifically chose for them?" My brother-in-law puffed up his chest. "The kids needed the bigger room. Your parents are fine in the guest room." The guest room with no windows that I'd set up as my dad's workshop. I pulled out my phone and opened a screenshot. "When exactly were you planning to tell me about this?" I turned the screen toward him. It was an Airbnb listing. Their profile picture was them standing on my parents' porch. The description read, "Luxury beachfront mansion managed by local family. Sleeps 12. Perfect for weddings and parties. The price, $850 per night." My mom gasped. My dad's hands clenched into fists. "You were going to rent out our home?" My mom whispered. My sister jumped in. "It was just an idea, Mom, to help cover expenses. You know, property taxes, utilities." "The property taxes are paid 20 years in advance," I said flatly. "I paid them in full at closing. There are no expenses." My brother-in-law's face was turning red. "Who the hell do you think you are coming in here?" "The trustee," I said. Silence. "So, what?" my sister asked. I pulled a manila folder from my bag. "When I bought this house, I didn't just hand them the keys. I set up an irrevocable trust. The house is owned by a family trust. Mom and Dad are lifetime beneficiaries. They can't be removed, ever." I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. "I'm listed as sole trustee. That means I control who lives here, who visits, and who gets kicked out for violating the terms." I pulled out another paper. "Like this clause here, Section 7, Paragraph 3. Any commercial use of the property voids occupancy rights for non-beneficiaries." I held up my phone again. "Your Airbnb listing went live 4 hours ago. I got the notification because I set up a Google alert for this address." My sister's face drained of all color. "You've already accepted 2 bookings for next month," I continued. "The first one is a bachelor party. 12 guys. They're paying you $2,400 for 3 nights. My brother-in-law tried to speak, but nothing came out. I stood up. "Here's what happens now. You have exactly 1 hour to pack your things and leave. If you're still here when my locksmith arrives at 8 o'clock p.m., I'm calling the police for trespassing." "You can't do this," my sister shouted. "We're family." "You're right," I said calmly. "Family doesn't charge their parents' friends $850 a night to sleep in their house. Family doesn't take the master bedroom from 2 people who worked 50 years to retire. And family definitely doesn't make their father sit on the porch steps of his own home." I turned to my brother-in-law. "I'm also reporting your Airbnb income to the IRS. You collected $7,200 in deposits. That's taxable income you didn't declare." His face went from red to white. "I'll sue you." I was already reaching for my phone to call the locksmith when my sister's posture changed. Not hostile, something closer to reluctant, like she was deciding something. "There's a lien," she said finally, "filed before you closed. The title company flagged it last week." I stopped. "That's impossible. I ran a full title search." She didn't answer. I pulled up the closing documents on my phone, hands steady, and there it was. One line I'd never seen, buried in the exception schedule. A lien from 2019, $380,000. And the name attached to it was someone who had never once been mentioned in connection with this house, this family, or anything I thought I knew about my parents' past. Paul Decker. I read it out loud. Paul Decker. My sister said nothing. No "who's that?" No confusion. No performance of surprise. Just a pause where her eyes dropped to the floor. That told me everything I needed to know. "You know him," I said. She didn't deny it. She just picked up her purse from the counter and walked to the bedroom to get her bags. My brother-in-law stood there for a second longer, like he was waiting for her to argue, to fight back, but she didn't. She came back with 2 suitcases and went straight to the door. "We're leaving," she said quietly. He followed her without another word. The door clicked shut. The house went silent except for the sound of my mom still crying softly on the couch. My dad just sat there, staring at his hands. I helped my mom to the master bedroom, the one my sister had been sleeping in for 2 weeks. The sheets were still unmade, her kids' toys scattered across the floor. I started picking them up, and my mom put her hand on my arm. "Leave it," she said. "I'll do it tomorrow." But I knew she wouldn't, so I kept cleaning. By the time I finished, it was almost midnight. I made up the bed with the new linens I'd bought when I first purchased the house. The the ones that had been shoved into the hallway closet. My mom sat in the armchair by the window and watched me work. "You didn't have to do all this," she said. "Yeah, I did." She was quiet for a minute. Then, "I knew something was wrong when they got here." The way she looked at the house, like she was calculating something. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just smoothed out the duvet and stepped back. "Get some rest," I said. She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't going to sleep. I stayed up until 2 a.m. trying to reach my real estate attorney. He didn't answer the first 3 calls. When he finally called back around 2:20, his voice had that careful tone people use when they're trying to sound helpful, but really just buying time. "I saw your messages," he said. "Look, these post-closing cure periods happen sometimes. The title company handles the exception schedules, and if something got missed, did you see the lien before closing?" I asked. "The title company handles disclosures," he said. "They send over the preliminary report, and we review." "Did you personally review the exception memo?" A pause. "I'd need to pull the file." He didn't say no. He also didn't say yes. That was its own answer. "Pull it," I said, and hung up. I sat there on the couch in the dark for a while, just thinking. A $380,000 lien doesn't just appear out of nowhere. Someone files it. Someone signs paperwork. Someone pays filing fees. And my sister knew about it before I did. The next morning, I brought the name to my father. He was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. The mug still had steam coming off it, but his hands were just resting on either side like he'd forgotten what to do with it. I put my phone down in front of him with the lien document still open. "Who's Paul Decker?" My dad went pale. Actually pale. Like someone had just drained the color out of his face in real time. He set the mug down and his hand was shaking. "Dad?" He sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. "We hired a contractor in 2018, he said slowly. "For the old house, before we sold it. There was a dispute. He said we owed him for work he didn't finish. We said we didn't. It went back and forth for months. How much did he say you owed?" "I don't remember exactly, maybe $40,000? But it wasn't legitimate. He walked off the job halfway through, left the kitchen torn apart, cabinets half installed, holes in the drywall. Then how is there a lien for $380,000? My dad didn't answer. He just kept staring up at the ceiling like the answer was written there somewhere. "Who referred you to him?" I asked. He looked down, made eye contact for half a second, then looked away. "Your sister." Neither of us said anything for a long time. "She said he did good work for a friend of hers," my dad added quietly. "Said he was affordable. We were trying to fix up the house to sell, and we didn't have a lot saved, so we trusted her. And when he didn't finish the job, we told her. She said she'd talk to him, said she'd handle it. Then a few months later, he just stopped calling. We figured he gave up." I picked up my phone. "He didn't give up. He filed a lien." My dad's jaw tightened. "I never saw any paperwork." "That's because it wasn't filed against you. It was filed against the property. It just sat there, waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For this," I said, holding up the phone. "For someone to buy the house and trigger the title search." My dad's hands curled into fists on the table. "She knew." "Yeah," I said. "She knew." I spent the rest of the morning searching for Paul Decker online. His contractor's license had expired in 2021. No active business registration. No website. But I found an old address tied to his LLC filing from 2019. A P.O. box in a town about 90 miles north. I sent a letter that afternoon. Short. Professional. I didn't threaten anything. I just said I had questions about a lien filed against property my parents used to own, and I'd appreciate a conversation. I included my phone number and email. 3 days later, I sent a follow-up. Same tone, same message, just checking in. On day 4, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Paul Decker," the voice said, guarded, flat, like he was reading from a script he'd prepared. "How'd you get my number?" "Public records," I said. "I'm calling about a lien you filed in 2019. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Against a property owned by my parents for $380,000. Silence. "I've got the filing right here," I continued. "Your name, your signature, notarized. Filed April 2019. So unless someone stole your identity, you know exactly what I'm talking about." He didn't hang up. That told me he was listening. I kept going. "I also know you did work for my parents that year. A renovation dispute. My dad says you walked off the job. But the lien isn't for $40,000. It's for almost 10 times that. So either you're running some kind of scam, or someone paid you to file it." Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear him breathing on the other end. "I'm not trying to bury you," I said. "I just want to know what happened." He exhaled, and I could hear him deciding something. Then he started talking. "Your sister came to me in 2019, he said. "She had the whole thing mapped out. File the lien, let it sit, wait for the house to sell or get refinanced, and then use it as leverage. I thought it was just going to attach to some equity in a normal sale. Maybe $200K, $250K tops. I didn't know you were buying them a mansion. How much did she pay you?" $15,000, cash, up front." I didn't say anything. I just let that sit there between us. "I've got documentation," he added. "Text messages, a written agreement. I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but I'm not the one who came up with the idea. She approached me. She had it all planned out before I even agreed." "Send it to me," I said. "Why would I do that?" "Because if you don't, I'm going to assume you're lying, and I'm going to make this a lot worse for you than it needs to be. But if you cooperate, maybe we can work something out." He was quiet for a beat. "What kind of something?" "The kind where you don't end up charged with fraud." He hung up. But 2 hours later, an email came through. No message, just attachments. Scanned images of text messages between him and my sister. A signed one-page agreement laying out the terms. He'd file the lien, she'd pay him up front, and they'd split whatever they recovered when the house sold. And a photo of a cashier's check made out to him for $15,000, dated March 2019, a month before the lien was filed. She'd planned this far enough in advance to have the money ready. That wasn't a crime of opportunity. That was premeditated. I forwarded the entire email to myself from 3 different accounts, then printed everything and put it in a folder. Then I called my attorney again. This time, he picked up on the first ring. "I'm sending you something," I said. "Check your email." I forwarded Decker's documents while I had him on the line. I heard the notification chime, heard him clicking. "This is okay," he said carefully. "This is actually really helpful. I can probably make this go away quietly. I'll cover the resolution costs myself if you don't escalate it to the bar." I didn't say anything. "I'm serious," he continued. "I'll handle it. No fees. We just keep this between us." I was holding my phone in my other hand. I opened the voice recorder app and hit the red button. "Why would you cover the costs?" I asked. "Because I should have caught this. And honestly, it's easier for both of us if we just move on. You're offering to pay out of pocket so I don't report you. I'm offering to make this right," he said. But his voice had that edge now, like he knew he'd said too much. "Right," I said. "So if I understand correctly, you missed a $380,000 lien in the title review, and now you want to pay to make it disappear so I don't file a complaint with the state bar. That's not— Look, I'm trying to help here." "Got it," I said. "Thanks for clarifying." I let him try to walk it back for another 30 seconds before I thanked him and hung up. The recording was crystal clear. I sat there for a minute just staring at my phone. Then I texted my sister. Just 4 words. "We need to talk." She didn't reply for 6 hours. I watched my phone on and off all day, waiting. Finally, around 8 p.m., my screen lit up. "Where?" I picked a coffee shop halfway between her place and the house. Neutral ground. Somewhere public. I got there early and sat in the back corner with Decker's documents in a folder on the table in front of me. She walked in 10 minutes late. Sunglasses on, even though it was overcast outside and nearly dark. She sat down across from me and didn't take them off. Didn't say hello. Just sat. I slid the folder across the table. She opened it. I watched her eyes move across the first page. The text messages. The agreement. The cashier's check. Her face didn't move, but I saw her swallow. "This isn't what it looks like," she said. "Then what is it?" "I was trying to protect them. By filing a fake lien for $380,000? She closed the folder and pushed it back toward me. "You don't get it. You were never around. I was the one who stayed. I drove them to doctor's appointments. I fixed things when they broke. I showed up when you were busy building your life somewhere else. So you decided to scam them." "I found the down payment," she said, and her voice cracked just a little. 5 years ago. You wired them money for a house they never bought. $50,000. They never told me. I found the bank statement in their filing cabinet when I was helping them move. I just looked at her. That was a gift," I said slowly. "They were going to use it for a down payment and then they decided not to buy. It was their money. They didn't owe you an explanation. I was taking care of them while you were sending checks from across the country," she said, and now her voice was rising. "And they never even told me you were helping. Do you know how that felt? Finding out you'd given them $50,000 and nobody thought I should know? So you hired a contractor to file a lien." She stared at me. "I thought you'd pay it off. I thought it'd come out of the sale or whatever trust fund you set up. I didn't think it'd blow up like this. You took $15,000 and handed it to a stranger to defraud our parents." She stood up. "I can pay it back. Sit down." She didn't. "I'm bringing this to Mom and Dad," I said, "and they're going to decide what happens next." She grabbed the folder off the table and threw it at me. Papers scattered everywhere. Then she turned and walked out, sunglasses still on, and I was left sitting there picking up documents off the coffee shop floor while other customers stared. That night, I sat down with my parents. I didn't sugarcoat it. I laid everything out on the kitchen table. The documents, the text messages, the agreement, the check. My mom didn't react the way I expected. Her face didn't change. She just nodded slowly like she'd been expecting something like this for years and was almost relieved to finally have it confirmed. "Press charges," she said, just like that. No hesitation. My dad didn't say anything at first. He just stared at the papers spread across the table, his hands folded in front of him. "Dad?" I said. He shook his head. "I need to think." I gave him space. 2 days later, I asked him again. We were sitting on the back deck, watching the ocean. He'd barely said 10 words to me since I showed him the evidence. "Yes," he said quietly, still looking at the water. "Press charges." But the lien wasn't the only thing. I'd been going through my parents' old financial records for days, trying to piece together how tight things had been before I bought the house. My dad and I were sitting at the kitchen table one afternoon with a stack of bank statements spread out between us, organized by year. I was looking at the balances month by month, and something wasn't adding up. There was a period in 2020 where the numbers just didn't make sense. "Dad, what happened here?" I pointed to a 6-month stretch where the account balance dropped by almost $5,000 without any major purchases listed. No checks written, no big transfers, just steady withdrawals in small amounts. He squinted at the statement, holding it close to his face. "I don't know. We thought it was a banking error." From the other room, my mom's voice came through. "I was never sure it was an error." I looked up. She was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, watching us. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean, I noticed it," she said, but I didn't want to believe it. My dad set the statement down. "What are you talking about?" "The withdrawals," my mom said. "They were always small. $400 here, $600 there. Never enough to make you look twice, but they kept happening. And every time I mentioned it, you said it was probably a mistake." "It was a mistake," my dad said, but he sounded less certain now. "When did you first notice?" I asked my mom. She came into the room and sat down. 2020, early that year, I think. I called the bank twice. They said they'd look into it, but nothing ever came back wrong. I pulled out my phone and opened the notes I'd been keeping. The timeline was starting to come together, and I didn't like where it was going. "When was her name added to your account?" I asked. My dad frowned. "What? Your bank account? When did you add her as an emergency contact with access?" My mom's face went still. 2019, she said quietly. "Late that year. She said it was in case something happened to us, so she could pay bills if we were in the hospital or something." "Did you give her a debit card?" "No, just account access. She could go into the branch and make withdrawals if she needed to." I pulled up the bank's online portal on my laptop and logged into the archived statements. It took me 20 minutes to download everything, but when I laid it all out, the pattern was obvious. 14 months, $31,000 total, 6 separate withdrawals, $4,200 in March 2020, $5,800 in May, $6,100 in July, $3,900 in September, $5,500 in November, $5,500 in January 2021. None of them large enough to trigger a fraud alert. None of them round numbers, spaced out just enough to look like regular expenses if you weren't paying close attention. Patient, careful, deliberate. My parents had been watching their balance drift for over a year and convinced themselves it was a banking error because the alternative was something they couldn't say out loud. My dad's hands were shaking. "How do you know it was her?" "I don't yet," I said, "but I'm going to find out." I didn't tell them what I was planning. I just said I'd handle it. The next day, I drove to their bank. It was a small regional branch, the same one they'd been using for 30 years. I walked in and asked to speak with the branch manager. Her name was Rita. She was probably in her mid-50s, and she remembered my parents immediately. "How can I help you?" she asked once we were sitting in her office. I pulled out the account statements and laid them on her desk. "I need transaction records for these withdrawals. Specifically, I need to know who authorized them." She looked at the dates. "This is going back a few years." "I know, but I need to see the withdrawal slips. I need to know if they were made in person, and if so, by who." She hesitated. "I'll need authorization from the account holders." I pulled out a signed letter from my parents giving me permission to access their records. I'd had them sign it that morning. Rita made a copy, then disappeared into the back for almost 20 minutes. When she came back, she was carrying a folder. "These are copies," she said. "The originals are in storage." I opened the folder. 6 withdrawal slips. Every single one had been made in person, at branches across town, different locations, different tellers, but everyone had been authorized using account access tied to my sister's ID. Her signature was on every slip. When I showed my parents, my dad put his head in his hands and didn't say anything for a long time. My mom just nodded, like she'd known all along. "I knew," she whispered. A week later, I got a call from someone I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end said he was a friend of the family and that my brother-in-law wanted to talk. I almost hung up, but something made me stay on the line. "Put him on," I said. There was shuffling, and then my brother-in-law's voice came through. He sounded different, smaller, like someone who'd just realized how bad things actually were. "I didn't know," he said. I didn't say anything. "About the lien, about the withdrawals. I swear I didn't know until you showed up at the house. She told me the Airbnb thing was fine, that your parents were okay with it, that you'd approved it." "Okay," I said flatly. "I can give you a written statement," he said, "about the Airbnb income, about her plan for the house, all of it. I'll tell you everything I know." "Why?" "Because I have kids," he said. "And if this goes to court, I don't want them seeing their mom go to jail because I stayed quiet." "Send it over," I said, and hung up. The document arrived 2 days later. FedEx, signature required, 3 pages, typed, signed, notarized. He laid out everything. The Airbnb scheme, the timeline, the deposits they'd collected, the bookings they'd accepted. He even included screenshots of their text messages where she'd talked about maximizing the property and making it work for us. There were messages about how much they could charge for holiday weekends, about how they'd keep my parents out of the way when guests were there, about how I'd probably never notice because I lived too far away to check. One message from my sister, dated 2 weeks before I showed up, said, "We'll deal with him if he finds out. He's too busy to care anyway." I forwarded the entire thing to the DA's office the same day. My sister called me 2 weeks later. I was in my car when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. "Can we talk?" she asked. Her voice was calm, too calm, like she'd rehearsed this. "We're talking. I mean in person." "No." A pause. "I can pay it back. The withdrawals, the lien, all of it. I'll get the money. Just give me time." "That's not up to me. Let Mom and Dad decide," she said. And now there was an edge to her voice. "Let them decide whether to press charges. This is between me and them." "I already did," I said. They said yes. She was quiet for a long time. I could hear her breathing. Then she said, "You're really going to do this? You're really going to send me to jail?" "I'm not doing anything," I said. "You did this to yourself." She hung up. The DA filed charges 3 weeks later. One felony count of elder financial abuse under state law. It carried a maximum of 4 years. One count related to conspiracy and the lien scheme. The prosecutor assigned to the case called me personally to go over everything. "Your contractor friend is cooperating," she said. "Paul Decker. He's agreed to provide testimony and documentation in exchange for a civil penalty. No criminal charge for him." "What about my attorney? The real estate attorney?" She paused. "That's a separate matter. The title insurance company is handling that internally, but I've been told they're subrogating the claim against him personally. He'll likely lose his license." "Good," I said. "There's also the matter of unreported income," she continued. "Your brother-in-law collected over $7,000 in Airbnb deposits. The IRS has opened an audit. That's federal." I didn't feel bad about any of it. The case moved slowly. Court dates got pushed. Motions were filed. My sister hired a lawyer who tried to get the charges reduced, then dismissed, then delayed. It didn't work. 6 months after the DA filed, my sister took a plea deal. The hearing took less than an hour. I didn't go. I couldn't. I thought about it. I got dressed that morning, made it as far as my car, and then just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel until the hearing was over. My mom went. She called me afterward. 3 years probation, she said. No jail. She has to pay back the $31,000 and 200 hours of community service. That's it? The judge said because she had no prior record and because she showed remorse, jail time wasn't warranted. I didn't say anything. She cried, my mom added, in court. She cried and said she was sorry. Do you believe her? My mom was quiet for a beat. I don't know. The real estate attorney's license was revoked 90 days after the title insurance company filed their complaint. I got a notification from the state bar. It was a short email. Professional. Sterile. Just the facts. I deleted it. The IRS audit on my brother-in-law took longer, but eventually they hit him with penalties and back taxes for the unreported Airbnb income. He had to pay it all back, plus interest. I heard through a family friend that they almost lost their house over it. I didn't feel bad about that either. The restitution check arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. It came in a plain white envelope with no return address. Just a check for $31,000 made out to my father. He was standing at the kitchen counter when I brought the mail in. I handed him the envelope and watched him open it. He pulled out the check and just stood there, staring at it. She actually paid it, he said. Looks like it. He held it for a long time. Minutes. Just stood there with the check in his hands, staring at the numbers like they were written in a language he didn't quite understand. Then he flipped it over, signed the back, and handed it to me. Put it in the trust, he said, for the house. I took the check to the bank that afternoon and deposited it into the trust's maintenance fund. The teller printed a receipt and I folded it into my wallet. The same week, the title clearance letter came from the insurance company. It was official this time. Clean title. Lien fully extinguished. No exceptions. No asterisks. No footnotes buried in fine print. I opened it standing at the mailbox and read it twice to make sure I wasn't missing anything. I wasn't. I put it in the trust folder with everything else. The original deed, the trust documents, the tax receipts, the insurance policies. Then I left the folder on the kitchen counter and walked away. I picked up my phone. I scrolled to my sister's name. My thumb hovered over the call button. I didn't know what I'd say. I didn't know if there was anything left to say. Sorry felt wrong. So did anger. So did anything that required me to pretend things could go back to how they were. I set the phone down. My parents were sitting on the back deck, watching the ocean. The sun was going down and the sky was turning orange. My dad had his arm around my mom's shoulders. Neither of them said anything. They just sat there. I walked out and sat down next to them. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to like and subscribe to not miss the next story.